Intervention, Book 1, The Surveillance. Chapter 1, from the Memoirs of Rogetien Remillard. I went down to walk along the icebound Connecticut River very early today, before beginning this chronicle. My wits were more than usually muddled from overindulgence, and I had received an emotional shock as well. Call it a waking dream that now seemed quite impossible out here in the fresh air and the revitalizing etheric resonances of the rising sun. As I went along Maple Street, the pavements were still patchy wet and steaming. The melting network had been turned back on precisely at 0200 hours. In the business district and throughout most of the college precincts, the minus 25-degree chill would be gentled by area heaters, but in this residential part of Hanover, it was still fast winter. The night's brief storm had given us an additional 10 or 15 cents of snow, piling small drifts in the lee of fences and shrubs. Out here, only a few wealthy eccentrics had force-field bubbles over their houses to screen out the elements. It was early enough so that the gravomagnetic ground cars and flying eggs were still locked away in their garages. Down in the sheltered strip of woodland, alongside frozen Mink Brook, the scene was even more reminiscent of the New England I knew when I was a kid in the 1940s. The snow under the tall hemlocks and birches was almost knee-deep and level as a marble floor. I'd bought Decamol snowshoes in my coat pocket, and it took only a moment to inflate them, slip them on, and go slogging down to the shore path that paralleled the silent Connecticut. The great deep river was locked under a thick ice mantle, reminding me that winters are colder now than in my youth, if not always so picturesque. Thanks to the storm, the snow cover of the Connecticut was again without blemish, swept clean of the tracks of skis and power toboggans and the footprints of foolish rabbits seeking a better climate on the other bank, over in Vermont. I shooed north for nearly 2.5 kilometers, passing under the Wheelock Street Bridge and skirting the Ledyard Canoe Club. Finally, I reached that awesome patch of forest preserve where white pines tower 80 meters high, and little siskins and nuthatches whisper mysteriously in the brush thickets. The scent of conifer resin was intense. As so often happens, the odor triggered memory more strongly than any effort of will ever could. This snow-girt woods I had not visited for 3 decades was the place where the boys used to come. The Gilman Biomedical Center of the college was only a few blocks away, and the Metapsychic Institute and the hospital. Young Mark, an undergraduate already showing the promise that would someday make him a paramount Grand Master, used to coerce the nursing staff in the intensive care unit and take Jack away. The beloved baby brother, slowly dying of intractable cancers that would devour his body and leave only his great brain untouched, rode in an ingeniously modified backpack. Mark and Jack would spend a morning or an afternoon talking, laughing, arguing. Stolen, pitiable hours of pine and pain and the contention of those brother minds. It was then the rivalry was born that would bring thousands of inhabited planets to the brink of ruin and threaten not only the evolution of the human mind, but also that of the 5 exotic races who had welcomed us into their peaceful galactic milieu. Close to the shore where the snow lies drifted, it is not easy to tell where granite ends and the frozen river begins. The juncture is veiled. Molecules of water have slowed to the solidity of stone, apparently immutable. My deep sight easily sees through the snow, to tell the difference just as it pierces the icy lid of the Connecticut to perceive the black water flowing beneath. But I am not strong-minded enough to see the subtler flux of the ice molecules themselves, or the vibration of the crystals within the granite boulders, or the subatomic dance of the bits of matter and energy among the nodes of the dynamic field lattices that weave the reality of ice and grey rock into the cosmic all. My vision of the winter river in its bed remains limited, in spite of the abstract knowledge science lends me. And how much more difficult it is to apprehend the greater pattern. We know we are free, even though constraints hedge us. We cannot see the unus mundus, the entirety that we know must exist, but are forced to live each event rushing through space and time. Our efforts seem to us as random as the Brownian movement of molecules in a single drop of ultra-magnified water. Nevertheless, the water droplets come together to make a stream, and then a river that flows to the sea, where the individual drops, to say nothing of the molecules, are apparently lost in a vast and random pooling. The sea not only has a life and identity of its own, but it engenders other, higher lives, a role denied to water molecules alone. Later, after the sun draws them up, the molecules condense into new water drops or snowflakes and fall and sustain life on the land before draining away to the sea again in the cycle that has prevailed since the biogenesis. No molecule evades its destiny, its role in the great pattern. Neither do we, although we may deny that a pattern exists, since it is so difficult to envision. But sometimes, usually at a far remove of time, we may be granted insight that our actions, our lives, were not pointless after all. Those, and I am one, who have never experienced cosmic consciousness, may find consolation in simple instinct. I know in my heart, as Einstein did, and he was justified in the long view, if not in the short, that the universe is not a game of chance, but a design, and beautiful. The great white cold takes hold of the amorphous water droplet and turns it into an ice crystal of elegant form. Can I organize my memories into an orderly ensemble and give coherence to the tangled story of the family Rémillard? I have been assured that I can, but you, the entity reading this, may decide otherwise. C'est bien ça. The chronicle will begin in New Hampshire and conclude in interstellar space. Its time span, willy-nilly, will be that of my own life, but I will tell the story from a number of different viewpoints, not all of them human. My personal role in the drama has not always been prominent, and certain milieu historians have forgotten that I existed, except for grudging footnotes. But I was Don's fraternal twin, and close to his wife and children. I was with Dennis and Lucille at the intervention, and I know what drove Victor and the Sons of Earth to their infamy. I was privy to the secrets of the Rémillard dynasty and to those of the founding human magnates. I watched Paul sell New Hampshire as the human capital of the milieu. I stood by Teresa throughout her tragedy. I know what kind of demons possessed Madeline. I can tell the story of Diamond Mask, since her life was inextricably intertwined with that of my family. Mark's tormented presence and his metapsychic rebellion will pervade these memoirs and climax them. Above all, however, this will have to be the story of John Rémillard, whom I called T-Jean, and the milieu named Jack the Bodiless. Even though he was born after the intervention, his life is prefigured in the struggles and triumphs of the people I will write about in this book, the first human beings to have full use of their higher mind powers. But Jack would be their culmination. He would show us the awful and wonderful course our human evolution must take. He was the first mental man. Terrified, we saw in him what we would eventually become. Saint Jean, le désincarné, priez pour nous. But please, let us not have to follow your example for at least another 1,000,000 years.